Hello, founders. Welcome to Startup Request Live. I'm your host, Ed Kang, joined as always by founder and CEO Will Schroeder here at Startups.com. Everybody, we have a fantastic show for you lined up. Today, we're going to be talking about how your attitude is your altitude, especially when it comes to fundraising. We've got a little bit of fun in store for you. I've got something that we're going to do with Will, and he has not seen it yet. It's going to be all new for him.
Game
We're
show.
putting on the spot. Optimizing your funding requests. We have a lot of great funding requests. We're going to look at those and how to get the most out of putting requests on startups.com for your funding. There's a 500K pre-seed request for a climate tech company, 15K seed. We're going to talk about difference between pre-seed and seed requests with pitch decks, how to combine the two, and more, because we are recorded in front of a live studio audience. Therefore, viewer discretion is strongly advised. Will, I heard a long time ago that your attitude is your altitude, how high it'll go. I think it's particularly true. When was the time that you learned that your attitude directly correlated with your success as a founder?
When I was 8 years old. And,
Okay.
and you know, when people say things like that, you expect kind of a trite story behind it. But I mean, it was life changing. I'm 8 years old. I didn't have a lot of money as a kid. So when I would go to school, I often didn't have money for lunch or anything. I'm at the bus stop and there was a deli where I lived in the East Coast. So we have delis everywhere. There was a deli across the street. I had a quarter on me. Lunch cost $1. I went across the street and I went to the deli and I looked for what I could buy with a quarter. Okay, now I'm 8 years old, mind you. I'm 8 years old. So
Okay.
I'm not looking for healthy snacks, right? I walk away with really the crappiest decision I could have made because it was the cheapest thing I could find. Do you remember Now and Laters, Ed? The candy called Now and Laters? They were kind of like waxy, like in a
Oh,
brick,
yeah.
right? Right.
Yeah.
8-year-old me decides that that's the right move. So I acquire my Now and Laters. There were 6 to a pack. And I get on the bus, and this kid's sitting next to me says, "Hey, Will, I see you got Now and Laters. Can I have one?" And I like, this is kind of sad, but I'm like, no, this is actually my lunch. I didn't say this, but he's like, "I'll buy one from you. How about for a quarter?" And what I thought he meant, I'll buy the whole pack because I paid a quarter for it, right? So I give him the pack, not thinking anything of it. He gives me the quarter. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not really any further ahead now. But here's the change. He takes one and he hands the rest back to me. And another kid is like, "Hey, can I have one?" And he hands me a quarter, and I hand him one. And all of a sudden, in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, right? And by the end of the bus ride, I had sold all 6 Now and Laters. Okay, I have $1.50. I go to the lunch lady that day, and I hand her my first dollar that I've ever earned, and bought my first lunch, which would be the last time anybody would ever pay for anything in my life ever again. Like from that point on,
That's
I
great.
was I was sold. Once I realized that, once I had the attitude that I had control of my destiny, it changed everything. Because you got to figure most people don't feel particularly empowered. They feel like life happens to them, not by them.
So true.
And so that was the first time that I ever felt empowered, that I could control my own destiny. And it wasn't determined by anyone else. And needless to say, that would shape the rest of my career.
Another successful individual who sold candy at an early age was Warren Buffett. Will.
Everybody's got a candy story, man. Like I bet half the people listening right now have the candy story, right? There's a reason. Like these two things tend to come naturally. What it taught to me is something I try to instill in my children, and when I teach classes and things like that. Self-reliance and empowerment is powerful. It's also exponential,
Right.
right? When you say no one controls my destiny but me, because no one else is part of the program anymore. That's a big deal. That's incredible. It's also why we're all here.
It all goes to that mindset, having the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. The
Yep.
book by Dr. Carol Dweck. We actually have founders where Carol Dweck has participated in their startups, which has been really fun.
Yeah.
But it was Satya Nadella who came in at Microsoft and he says, you know what? We've got just a company full of know-it-alls, and they were really struggling, and we want to make them all learn-it-alls. And he made everybody read that book, and it's all about the attitude that you need for the right mindset. And Will, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, we meet founders. I can think of them, like some of you are in the audience right now from
Yeah.
Startups.com. We meet founders. Their attitudes are so great that when I talk to them, after I get so pumped and I'm like, let's effing go. Let's build this startup. You got to be meeting the same founders.
Again, because you have these two mentalities, what happened by me versus what happened to me. Fun fact, you can always tell this with employees. The good employees always say what happened by them when it's good and bad. The bad employees look like this. The bad employees say bad things happen to me and good things happen by me, right? And I always find that to be like a fascinating bit of psychology. But I think for me, good or bad, it happened by me, right? I mean, life throws you curveballs. I've got random stuff that's happened to me. There's nothing I could do about, but how I react to it is the by me part, right? And I think that's an important element.
We are talking today, for those of you who are joining us, how your attitude is your altitude, especially when it comes to fundraising. By the way, this show is brought to you by us here at Startups.com. Head on over, easy URL to remember, and you can plug in your request and try all the tools that we're going to show you here for free. Just get some value, experience it yourself before you decide whether you want to join our wonderful community. Appreciation of all of you members here joining us right now. Here are the requests that we're looking at. We're going to be specifically covering funding requests. You see the ones in green. But first, we're going to have a little bit of fun, everyone. And I'm not saying it's anybody in the audience. Please don't think that we're pointing anybody out. We're just talking generalizations. But I get comments all across the interwebs in terms of all people, different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, levels of startups, and startups have become really popular. And so often we will find individuals who have, different attitudes, make different comments, and especially when it comes to that fundraising. So here's what we're going to do. And everyone, Will has not seen these before. He knows I'm going to show him some content like this. We're going to have some commentary, and who knows? I'm sure you know a founder like this, or it's just a little bit of an attitude check. I don't know what you want to call it, to help you with your fundraise, especially here at Startups.com. Here's a little fun. I got two cartoons, Will, A and B. I'm going to explain each one, the founder, the scenario, and we're going to talk about how it affects your fundraising. And you get to pick which one affects your fundraising adversely more. On A, we've got the founder who sort of trolls the internet and questions everything and says, all right, if you're so smart, why are you selling a course? I get this comment a lot when I invite people to Startups.com, and I like to say, well, it's not a course. It's actually an advisory-based community. But you have a lot of people who go online, get these gotcha opportunities, and they try and score some street cred, whatever it is, attention economy, you know the deal.
Yep.
And then on the other side, we have the founder that wants everything sort of spoon-fed and could easily ask ChatGPT a question, but instead goes and says, hey, can you answer this for me? Can you tell me? And they're not actually as self-motivated to go out and find the answers as easy as possible before they come and talk to someone else, someone like us. A or B, which one? Comments on each. What do you think?
I prefer the founder that asks a million questions. I mean, that's always been, Ed, that's always been the bane of our existence as far as building a product for founders. Is surprising as it may be to the people listening, the people in the audience right now, our number one product issue at Startups.com has always been people don't ask enough questions. And here's why. Because typically you don't know why you should be asking the questions. So in other words, they'll say, hey, what should my valuation be? Because they actually understand that they don't know what, either what a valuation is or how it's arrived at, et cetera. What you should be thinking about is what the milestone for the amount of money you're raising is going to get you to, because that'll drive your valuation a lot more. If you can say, by raising $1 million, I'm going to hit this exponential milestone that allows us to raise way more in the future or scale faster, that's more worthy of evaluation than just making up some numbers. But people don't think to ask those questions. So for me, the thing I think hurts most is not asking at all. Kind of the self-imposed know-it-all, like you were saying at Microsoft, versus, hey, I'm going to go in blank slate. I'm going to pretend I'm going to throw away all my preconceived notions, and I'm just going to ask everything like it's the first time I've ever heard it.
I would agree. If you're founder A, again, not saying anybody in our audience or watching this is founder A, but I've had my share of experiences, you're never even going to get out of the gate. At least with B, we train our founders when to use tools like ChatGPT, Ask AI, but then always come and verify with us, because you're getting such a hodgepodge of different answers. ChatGPT in particular tends to be very flowery, tell you what you want to hear. So we'll kind of give you the goods. So I would definitely prefer founder B.
Yeah, and it's funny to me is you mentioned ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all day long, so I'm a huge fan. But if I didn't know what a right answer was, I would be so screwed so many times, right? I mean, like what you said, the flowery answers, the confidence that it delivers bad information is psychotic.
Yeah.
Like I'll feed a question where I know the answer. It'll come back with this absolute certain, almost treatise level answer. And I'll be like, and I write back because I love messing with the AI. I'm like, you just made that up, didn't you? Yes. It's like the most honest employee, right? Incredible. But again, let's look at just the sphere of advice, though, Ed. Okay,
Sure.
so
Okay.
if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fundraise, and let's say I'm really diligent, and I'm going to go tackle 5 different advisors, trusted sources that I know that can help me with the fundraising process or ask questions. And we're talking about fundraising, but this could apply to literally any part of the business. I'm often going to get 5 different answers, and they're all going to have bias. They're all going to have bias by definition. The problem is when I don't recognize the bias. For
Mm.
example, I go to somebody and I say, "Hey, should I, raise, a pre-seed round of 100K at $1 million valuation?" And that founder who's done incredibly well is like, "Are you kidding? It should be at least a $5 million pre-seed, right? Right there. For you, it should be, right? Because you sold a company before this, because you're going to the market so differently." Or my favorite thing is when VCs give advice, but their entire frame of reference only applies to that world, which is like 1% of 1% of the world. And you have this complete confirmation bias. Well, you should only build a company if it's going to be, worth billions of dollars. Yeah, no, that's not true. See, it's good for you, for the 1% of people that will ever do that, but kind of think you should build it for other reasons too.
And founders feel insecure. They're putting themselves out there. They have imposter syndrome. So that advice from that one investor who's talking to you or that other founder who exited just hits so hard. And so you tend to get people really put too much weight on that. Or because they want to hear something specifically when ChatGPT says, "Oh, you're the best founder in the world. I know you're going to raise $200 million on $1 billion valuation right out of the gate." That starts to really seep in. And I think having a community of individuals say, "We've been there, done that. Hey, how about you look at the other side?" And maybe give you a bit of a hard time when you fall into that cognitive confirmation bias. That's helpful for our founders here at Startups.com. Let's take a look at the funding request that I brought up. And I wanted to bring this up from Vladimir, who actually might be in our audience right now. I want to give this a shout out, Will, because I thought of a lot of the funding requests that come in. This has been very well put together. I'm going to point out a few things. I'd like to know what you think. First, we got Vladimir saying Flux seeking 500K pre-seed solar powered gutter overflow prevention. I know exactly what it is. The tags
Damn,
are on point.
that's well done.
Right? Good
Yeah,
headline. Then
props to
we've
him.
got 500K and it's thoughtful, put together, the
Yeah,
stage. And look, Will, we've got a clear summary at the top. This is
this
what
is
we
really well
do,
done.
right? And then,
Wow.
Will, problem, solution, market,
I feel like a proud
traction.
parent right now.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Good for him,
Financials.
man.
Yeah, the team, former military pilot, mechanical expertise, funding asked, learn more. It's got a vision statement, a call to action at the bottom.
It's also a really big problem. I mean, it's a very like well identified problem, and like
Right.
it's spot on. So I just want to point something out. Ed, we released this functionality where everybody else could see what everybody's looking for. Maybe a couple months ago, and one of the unintended benefits that I've seen, actually, even now that we're recording this, on the show, is other people can see what other people are doing.
Right.
Like pause on that for just a second. For like decades and decades, if you were out raising, it was nearly impossible to find out how other people were doing it. Like you could find some ancient pitch decks, like people still use the Airbnb pitch deck and stuff like that, right? But you really couldn't see letter for letter exactly what other people were doing to be able to like compare notes against. And so even for people that aren't necessarily raising, it's kind of cool that they can now see exactly what people are doing. And say, "Oh shit, I didn't even realize I was supposed to put in a problem statement, for example, or I didn't understand I was supposed to represent, the market size like that." This wasn't the goal, but it was kind of a neat unintended benefit that we can now show all this, and it's about to get a lot more.
And that's what I wanted to do, Will, was highlight this one and sort of shout it from the rooftops. Hey,
Yeah,
this is a great template for you to understand how to put in a funding request. Because we're going to take a look at some others that could be optimized for this. Will, what are some other best practices that you see here that other founders should pay attention to?
there's plenty of content there, right? There's plenty of content, but it's short. I can scan through it pretty quickly. Anybody that's watching this video can kind of digest it. Where I get a little bit anxious is when people start to put long narratives. Like you're kind of assuming a little bit too much from the audience. In that folks that are reviewing this, investors that are looking at this, or the other side of it, people don't understand is while we can allow you to post your funding request so investors or other people can see it, that's actually not where most of the activity is going to happen. Our AI reads your request, and we've put a lot of time into this. Reads your request and tells you which investors you should be talking to. And then if you decide that you like them, we'll send an email to those investors through your Gmail or whatever on your behalf. So the request isn't so much, let me post something and have people come out of the ceiling to give me money. The world doesn't work that way. It's proactive. It says, okay, based on this, Here's who you should be talking to. Now, with that said, it's also doing a pretty good job. Like we have an AI that helps you build the request, but it also does a pretty good job of keeping you in your lane. So just at a high level, Ed, when I see a crazy long narrative, it is always, always, always reflective of a pitch that nobody's ever seen.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. 100%. And that harkens to what you always say, put some reps in, practice, get other people look at it, and then you can start to refine. So everyone, if you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, while you're here, like, comment, subscribe, always helpful. But we put these requests in the description of the video so you can click on it and start to learn more. This is a great best practice. Vladimir, shout out to you. Appreciate you. Let's take a look at A or B. Some other founders. Have a little fun, Will. On the left side, we have someone named Dunning-Kruger. The Dunning-Kruger effect, Will, is when someone knows a little bit about something, and that's just enough to make them feel dangerous, so they think they know everything. Yep. We have founders we met, like that. And then on the right side, on B, we have the founder that has looked for help, wants help, engaged advisors, and then constantly reminds them how expensive they are or what they're losing and is focused on that. A or B, which one affects you more in your fundraising?
I'm not worried about the costly one, to be honest with you, because I think for those folks that are kind of just watching the meter the whole time, they usually don't wind up paying for help for very long anyway. In other words, like they don't have this problem for very long because they don't value the time and the cost of help. And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying that's the archetype. They tend to not do that. I'm that way in certain things. There's certain things where I probably should pay for the help, but I just don't value it enough to be willing to pay for it. In others where I'm like, I'll pay any amount of money for someone else to do this. But it's the first one that I pay attention to more, which is I don't want to say the know-it-all, but it knows a lot less than they think. Let me give you an example. I do a pitch deck workshop every week. I'll do one this Wednesday. And in the pitch deck workshop, I always open up by saying, whatever you think you know about how pitch decks or fundraising works, just assume you're wrong. Now, that doesn't mean you are wrong, and that certainly doesn't mean that you're not smart. It means these processes tend to come with lots and lots and lots of misconceptions. And how do you know you have a misconception if you already assume you know it all?
Right.
The most popular thing I get is some variant of how Shark Tank works, right? The first thing I say is like, it's literally a TV show. It's not at all how fundraising works. There's no room of 5 random billionaires, right? That'll just invest in anything if you have a jazzy pitch in 1 minute and 30 seconds, right? Like it does, and also they don't like shout terms out in the middle of the meeting, like literally nothing like that, right? Like it's total theater. This is where people get their preconceived notions. We get people that come in from highly specialized backgrounds, like private equity, which you would think would have a great understanding of how fundraising works, and none of their background works. I had a guy last meeting. I thought valuations are when you have an auditor come in and run multiples of your revenue and everything else like that. I was like, that has nothing to do with how startup valuations work whatsoever, unless you're selling the company. That's a whole other side of it. For a lot of folks, their preconceived notions are wildly dangerous at this stage.
I work one-on-one with individuals. When someone starts off an advisor relationship, reminding me how much it costs or how much equity they gave up, you're not even going to get out of the gate in terms of getting anything helpful from me because you've immediately put up a wall. So it's one thing. And I would love just to dole out as much free advice. By the way, everything that we put out on our YouTube channel is for free. You can literally learn it all, everything that you need. But the Dunning-Kruger effect individuals, well, what happens for me is they tend to go through the 5 stages of grief. So they start off in denial. I know everything. Of course, I'm going to get funded.
Right.
$3 million. And then they hit the wall. And if they stay with me, they'll go through anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally they accept the reality. And that's where, for me, our advisor relationships really shine when they get to the point where they sort of go through a valley of sorrow and then they say, okay, it's that attitude. All right, maybe it's me. Help me. And we have some really great conversations. I'm sure you've experienced this over and over again when that penny drops, that aha moment happens for founders.
All the time. And I've also dealt with it firsthand. When I was first capital raising, this was like 20 years ago or so, and I'd come out of pitch meetings. I was very fortunate in the first time I was raising VC that I had some amazing advisors. Some of them were VCs themselves. And I remember coming out of a meeting once, and Marc, who's the managing director of Upfront Ventures out in LA. Marc was the first investor in my company. He had put his personal money before he'd become a VC. And I remember him looking at me, and Marc's very blunt, and he's like, what the bleep were you thinking? Like, there's nothing better than coming out of a pitch meeting and getting completely berated by your own investor. And I had all these conceived notions of what the audience wanted to hear about fundraising, et cetera. And he was like, don't ever say that again. Right. I don't remember what I said, but I remember he was very adamant that it was the wrong thing to say. And what he did a good job of unintentionally was convincing me that maybe I need to, rethink my premises.
Bill, you've had to have a serious level of trust for someone to be able to say that right to your face for you to receive it. And you're all the better for it. I've heard this story. I've heard how you learned from it and
Yeah.
success after that.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned is that I don't need to have all the answers. I need to have all the questions.
Good one.
What I've gotten really good at is having an endless stream of questions. And so if we're going to go launch a new marketing campaign, if we're going to go build a new product, et cetera, I'm like, there's no way I could possibly know the answers. No one does. So why bother? So why don't I get really good at asking questions and just rapid fire and keep testing assumptions? And that has served me incredibly well.
Let's look at another funding request. I've got here, Adam. Appreciate you, Adam, putting your request up here. Seeking 15K seed funding for Tennessee Estate Planning Technology Platform. We've got these tags as well as attachments for screenshots. Won't look into them. And then we've got this information. And it's the same thing. Solid information, Will. But what I want to call into question was understanding how much you should be raising, because when I see seed and I see 15K, I get some cognitive dissonance.
Here's what I would say. And I think if you and I were to have this conversation about this opportunity 18 months ago, you might have said, that's bananas low. But now, and again, I still think it's low. I just want to be clear. But for the first time, I actually think that's changing.
Okay, good. Explain.
I think it's changing because I think you've got AI and you've got smaller teams. And we need to do a whole episode on this. The rate at which startups are shrinking as far as number of people that generate the same outcomes is off the charts right now. Is what's cool about what we get to see here at Startups. It's actually kind of nice that we have these requests that we're getting to publish, because now everybody else gets to see what we see. We see where the market is headed months and years before everyone else sees it, because we see all the ideas at inception. So when we start to see a smaller team that can operate with 3 people that used to require 10 or 30 people to operate, we start to see some trends. And one of the trends that we're starting to see are much smaller teams getting a hell of a lot done. Ed, we're seeing it with our own team.
All day, every week.
One of the features we released, I won't bore people with it, but one of the features we released just like a couple weeks ago was so complicated, right? Super easy with AI, by the way. Super easy with AI, like the decisioning tools and everything. But for a minute, we thought we wouldn't be able to do it with AI and we'd have to hand code it. And I was like, not possible. Like literally not possible. Which means what would have taken us, I'm not even exaggerating here, 30 people to build 18, 24 months ago, we're able to build with 2 people by comparison. And I say that because that compression of resources is happening everywhere right now. It's a long way of saying I think $15,000 or $50,000 pre-seed is going to feel a lot different over the next 12 to 24 months than it did 12 to 24 months ago. What you can do with it.
One of the things we're predicting, Will, is that people take less capital or not need any capital in the beginning and then have like a monster A round because they're already profitable. They're making so much money. But what's important is to make sure that you don't cause people cognitive dissonance by having all your numbers aligned, but also really think through your financial model. I think that today, Will, 50K is a really great pre-seed round for sure. 15K, I think you burn that all up in credits
I don't
just
think
to
you can do
begin
anything
with.
for 15K.
Right.
I would agree with you there. And so my apologies. My point wasn't so much that 15K is the right number. It's that 50K, I should have been more specific, ain't what it used to be. 50K in the past couldn't get you past your closing docs. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean? Like it was such an insignificant amount of money. But now you can do a little bit of damage with 50K. It's not gonna take you that far, don't get me wrong, but it's different than what it used to be.
And this is the whole point I want to bring up is things are shifting. And that's why we want to be here for you to have these conversations. And when I tell a founder, listen, I think $2 million for your pre-seed is being aggressive, you're going to have a hard time, especially with the track record since the nuclear winter started in 2021. Rounds above $1 million absolutely plummeted, and they're starting to go down. We're not telling you this because we want you to raise less money or we want you to go hungry. We're saying it because this is how the investors are going to experience your ask. We're trying to optimize for you.
Yeah, and look, we want you to raise as much money as you can. Now, I want to just arm folks with a piece of advice that I think is both salient and useful for this conversation. Our general saying around here goes, raise as much money as you can when you can, because it's probably the last time you'll ever raise statistically. Let's say they can get past pre-seed. Well, statistically, the number that are going to make it from pre-seed to seed drops exponentially. Think of it the inverted funnel. Then the number of people who make it past seed to Series A drops way more than that, and then A to B, et cetera. The reason we pay attention to that is because every time you raise, it's a chance that it's never going to happen again. So when you can raise, when people are saying yes, take advantage, raise as much as you can. And I say that because I've never heard a person say, man, I wish I raised less last round. I wish I had less money in the bank. And if you're worried that you're going to give up too much or you're going to lose too much equity, don't. Because there's ways to structure the fundraise that if you get a lot of extra interest beyond how much you need, you can sell those additional rounds or shares, if you will, at a higher price. It doesn't have to be one fixed fee for everybody.
I've given, and some founders are absolutely aghast when I tell them this story. I've given for my first investor for that first $50,000 check, 80% discount.
Yeah, right. That's the point.
And now I've closed it, right? I've closed that round. Nobody ever gets another discount. And then I raise as much as I can. Then I act like that'll be the last raise I ever need, and everything's going to dry up after, and it makes me very disciplined. Now, I don't take for granted because a lot of founders think, oh, I'll wait for the next investor to come in and give me a better valuation, or we'll just use this until we go raise our next seed round. Isn't that how it works? And it's just expectations versus reality are just going to set you up for so much disappointment as a founder.
Yeah. And the problem is that the information that you're typically getting about how this all works are typically from people where it worked, right?
Yeah.
But the information you need to know is the cases where it didn't work, and more specifically why. So if all you're talking to is your Elon Musk level success person, all you understand and it's only specific to how his journey went, all you'll understand are how it works when it works. What you need to understand is 100 different variables for where it goes wrong. And that's how you learn about how anything really works.
And my pro tip to all of you out there is to make sure that you look at the source of your information. For example, LinkedIn is filled with people who flex about their fundraise. I read a few posts just over the weekend, and it was like, I raised, $5 million, my seed round, no pitch deck. I just walked in, had traction, and it was just right there. And I used long, awkward silences, and these were all my techniques. I didn't have to talk. Everybody was like, wow, and drop this like and give me this word, and I'll give you my playbook. And I simply put in a message, said, congratulations. I'm curious, how did you get all those investors in a room? How did it work? What got them there in the first place? What traction did you have? How many contacts? How many referrals? Yeah. And no answers. Crickets, because I wanted to point out, hey, we can't just take this advice in a bubble and think this is going to be the normal for everybody.
Is whenever you see a big anomalous raise like that, there's always a unique story behind it.
True. All the time.
20 years ago, among what other ventures that I'd done, I'd owned a company in Hollywood, of all places, that did casting for television. And people would come to us all the time. We had hundreds of thousands of people coming to us, and they all wanted to be famous. And I was like, well, you understand the probability of you getting cast on a major network or anything else like that is like so fractionally small. And yet everybody believes that they're going to be the one, of course, right? But they'll be like, yeah, but Brad Pitt did this. Like, yeah, one guy did it. That doesn't make it the process, right? Like most people here have 9 roommates. And have been, living on next to unemployment for 20 years. Like that's actually more of the process than anything. But people only see the successes, and they assume that the success can be modeled after the anomaly is the anomaly for a reason.
Let's look at 2 more founders here. How this affects your fundraise. We're having a little bit of fun, everyone. On A,
it's your fault.
We've got the founder, and I had conversations like this, Will. And actually, I have a lot of empathy for founders who get angry with me because there's emotional leakage and they attack VC. They think all VC investors are stupid, and somehow it ends up being my fault. And it's just blaming everybody else. And then that just gets projected to the person closest to them. I've been a punching bag for a lot of founders. I'm okay with it. Before it used to bother me, but when I really began to understand, began to empathize, that's what going through 5 stages of grief. Starts with anger, everyone. And then we've got the founder on the other side that doesn't talk to us or doesn't talk to anyone because they're trying to get perfection. They're trying to perfect their pitch deck, their product, their MVP before they do anything out there. And we see them disappear for months. And then they have no runway. Their back's against the wall. Will, A or B, which one affects us more?
Well, let me talk about it both. The first one where you blame the institution, that works never. right? Like there's nobody I've ever seen do well in anything because they did a good enough job complaining about it, right? Like it's just not how this works. It doesn't matter how mad you are at investors not responding to you. It doesn't matter how much you lash out at your advisors. This is your fault, not their fault. And if you don't believe that, you shouldn't be in this business. If you
True.
don't believe that the outcome of your actions is what drives your future, then this is the wrong business for you. If you want to be like, I'm only going to be successful if the world follows what I want. Good luck with that, right? It's not going to work. This is how I treat life. I treat everything as if it's my fault, right? Now, part of that's ownership, and part of that's just a learned behavior that I've grown up with. I look at it and I say, if someone didn't react the way I want, what can I do differently? Not what did they do wrong? What can I do differently? Here's why. The only thing I can control for, right?
Right. All the
Like,
time.
who cares what they did wrong? Right. Like all I can control is what I can do. And so if I look at everything as like someone got mad at me and I'm just so mad at them, useless. Right. The better psychology is, hey, they're mad at me. What can I do differently to change that outcome?
Something analogous to being a founder is marriage and relationships.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
say every problem in my marriage is 99% my fault. Or 99% of problems in my marriage are my fault. And people look at me and like, well, your wife's not perfect. And obviously nobody's perfect. But I say that 99%, I leave the 1% as for like an act of God or something
Yeah.
else. But I say I can take responsibility for every problem in my marriage. And I've been married 24 years, so I think it's worked out quite nicely. But same thing as a founder is thinking to yourself, all right, instead of getting mad that the investors say no, or thinking that something's wrong with the entire industry, I've had founders complain and say, OpenAI has raised billions of dollars, and how come I can't raise, $200,000? I just say it must be a skills issue. What skill can I learn to
Yep.
optimize my chance for next time? And even if it doesn't get me there, it gets me further along in the next encounter, the next pitch, whatever I need to learn.
Absolutely. And again, it's the only thing you control for. And so if you're constantly saying to yourself, what can I do to improve? What can I do to change? Maybe nothing, right? Maybe the person sitting across from you is a crappy person, right? Like maybe literally there's nothing you can do, but there's already nothing you can do. So the only control you have is of yourself.
What about the founder that just waits too long to perfect everything before going out there, getting feedback, talking to people?
This is typically people who are going to learn a really important lesson what it means to build products and be a founder. There isn't a version where you can just stay in the shadows, get no customer feedback whatsoever vis-a-vis advisors, investors, customers, et cetera, and have that work really well. It's the opposite. Your best bet is the moment you have that idea, you just don't shut up about it. You tell everybody because every single one of those interactions is going to shape it a little bit. Working in a vacuum it just guarantees failure. The idea is I don't want to show it to anybody until it's perfected because here's my fear. They're going to get the wrong impression. They're going to get a bad first impression. Yeah, if you present it as the final product that couldn't change, if you say, here's my initial idea, the equivalent of why we have alpha and beta launches, right? Here's my initial idea, but I'm not building this for it to be right. I'm building it to ask questions around. I'm building it so that when you see this deck, this problem statement, this market size, et cetera, that we can start having a conversation of what needs to be improved. That attitude wins 10 out of 10 times because you're letting the product evolve versus forcing a final product that's never been seen.
Where we're saying attitude is your altitude, that's with investors as well. So many times, Will, I've tried to present the perfect picture to investors and it goes nowhere. But when I share with them the journey and I tried this and I put it out there and I got this feedback and I took the wrong turn, working my way through the idea maze. And instead of going left, I went right the next time and I got a little more traction here. Investors have always responded better to me sharing that way.
Of course, right. But there's also another side to it. It's a factor of humility. Even when I build something that I am damn near sure is the right thing, I present it as what if. I present it as a question. Not because I'm being coy about it, but because I've been around long enough to know that there's no possible way I could be right for sure. And that has served me so well. What I'll do is I'll come up with like a business idea, strategy, et cetera. And I'll say, what if we tried this? How would you react to it? Instead of saying, here's what we should do. The difference is I'm not being assumptive. And Ed, you've worked with me for a long time. You see this a lot in my presentation, in my behavior. It's because the moment I get dead set, I'm thinking my answer has to be right. I'm already wrong because my answer is right when it's right for everybody else as well. And I mean that in the sense of like, if I'm trying to pitch investors and I've never shown it to any investors, how the hell do I know my answer's right? How do I know my product's right if I haven't talked to customers? How do I know like our team strategy is right if none of our team's on board? Right? Like pretty important to ask those questions.
You always say to me, well, this is either going to be great or it's a complete disaster. And
Yeah. And I'm okay with both.
Yes, we're going to learn along the way. Well,
Yeah.
what about with pitch decks? I find that the founders that are willing me to show their pitch deck to me earlier. Walk me through the black and white outline before they pour like a week into it with design and
Yeah,
spend
yeah.
money on it. I find that these founders tend to adjust better to feedback and get to the final pitch that's going to work for them much sooner.
Yeah, and I think being a creative personally and also having come from the agency world where like I have a very strong bias toward design and the effort that comes with it. I always tell people when they're building a pitch deck, do not do any design. Like literally, first time out, just focus specifically on words. In other words, like your ideal pitch deck creation tool should be Microsoft Notepad or whatever your Apple equivalent is. Like just literally nothing but bare text. Because I think when you start to invest time in your Canva design and in all your special imagery and everything else like that, you get committed to that path.
Emotionally.
Yeah, not because it's the right path, but because you spent so much damn time on it.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge mistake. So I say only invest in the words until it's worth investing anything beyond that.
Our next funding request comes to us from Ina. Seed funding for Polyheart, reducing water and fertilizer loss for agriculture. Will, I bring this one up because not only do we have information, but there's an actual pitch deck attached.
Yeah.
But Will, we always teach pitch decks in terms of the screener introduction deck, cold outreach.
Yeah.
But there are also pitch decks that would get attached to a request like this. And I thought it'd be really great to discuss how the two interact with each other. Will, what's the difference between a pitch deck that you send out cold and a pitch deck that you would attach to a request like this?
Yeah, look, I think a little bit of them, there's some overlap in the fact that in both cases, they need to stand on their own without you in the room. Let me just pause on that for a second so folks understand that. A lot of times when we're creating a pitch deck, when we build it, it's with the idea that we're presenting it. Right? And I see this all the time, and I'm sure you see it too, where the pitch deck makes total sense if I'm in the room pitching it, right? I can use big declarative statements, to open up what I'm about to say, et cetera, as if I'm giving a TED talk, right? And as if the pitch deck is just kind of information in the background while the pitch is what's happening. That's what you're going to see on Shark Tank. Except it doesn't work this way. In this case, when we're posting something publicly or when we're sending something in email, we're not there to present it. So the pitch deck has to be able to stand on its own naked, which a lot of people don't understand. And what happens is, we do these pitch deck reviews and workshops that I know you do these as well. And what we'll do is we'll have an entrepreneur present their deck. And, we have, Ed, countless shows that we've done on this channel where we review those decks without the entrepreneur. It is mortifying to the entrepreneur.
They're in the audience, mortified.
Yes, because they're like, that's not what I meant at all. And that's my point. The deck has to be able to stand on its own without you presenting it. Because 100% of the time, the deck will be sent ahead or presented, as part of a request, et cetera, and someone will digest it without you in the room in order to decide whether they want you to be in the room. For a lot of folks, that deck only makes sense when they present it, but when they email it out, no one has any idea what they're talking about.
We have here, Ina puts in her request. She shares some details.
Yeah.
We have a question in the audience, Will. I think it's worth repeating. What happens to this request when they post it? The question from our audience was, who sees it other than our community? Does anybody see it? Like, what happens as soon as they push publish and then it gets approved?
It'll get three methods essentially, and I'll explain why for each of them. One is it's public if you choose to make it public. There's way more requests that we have that are not shared publicly. And but I want to point out that for folks that are hitting the site, in this case, investors, but you got to understand, like, funding is just one part of our business. It's not like this whole site's dedicated to funding. So yes, we have investors that'll come on and check those out, but we have requests for co-founders. We have requests for all kinds of other stuff. The second is we use a matching tool, which will actively match you to other members that are on the platform based on the metadata, et cetera. And we've got a whole algorithm that runs. And so it'll say, hey, you should talk to this person and make a match Tinder style, right? So that the two of you can match. In the case of funding, which is a little bit unique, we also take it a step further to say, hey, in the database, here's exactly who you should be talking to. This is the exact partner. This is their direct contact information. Would you like us to make that introduction for you? And we'll be able to send out the email on your behalf. I said this a moment ago. I'll say this again. There is no substitute for you doing active outbound research. If you think you're just going to post something and everyone's going to come to you, this isn't the way the world works. This is with literally anything. I don't care if it's advisors, customers, co-founders, et cetera. Never assume you're going to post something and let somebody else do the work for you. It's not the way it works.
Leave no stone unturned, knock on all the doors. But Will, I had founders tell me, I post a request, an advisor has contacted them saying, I know people I could refer you to.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, I think that's what people assume, that when I post something, it must mean the only people that will ever see or respond to this are exactly the investor I'm looking for. But what you see with a lot of these requests, and I think this psychology is fascinating, is you're posting it out there saying, not only am I raising money, but here's the things I'm trying to get done. So in other words, I'm trying to build something in a particular vertical, or I'm trying to build something, that's unique in the space. I think for a lot of folks, what they don't realize is the people we're connecting you to aren't all just investors. They're advisors that would have help with that. They're people who could potentially be a co-founder. People who could potentially work for your company. People could be a service provider. There's a lot of people that can respond to that aren't just investors.
At the same time, some of these founders have told me that not necessarily institutional investors have reached out to them, but other founders who want to become angel investors because a lot
100%.
of
Right.
founders become
Right.
angels.
Well, that's that. See, that's where it gets interesting because if you didn't have a way to publicly say, "Hey, I'm raising," there's no way to let all these people know that opportunity even exists. Like right now, for all of you that don't have a public request, and this is just one mechanism. I'm not like pumping up just because we have it. Who knows who doesn't know what you're doing, right? Like how would anybody know unless you deliberately contacted them? So the idea behind posting this stuff public, not just funding requests, but all the requests that are on there, is a little bit of serendipity. A little bit of, hey, let me show what's out there and see who else might be interested in something similar. But we also, again, have a deliberate system that starts automatically matching you to all the people on the platform that could be a fit.
Here's the pitch deck attached. We're working with Ina on her pitch deck, but this is what she has so far. And without doing a full pitch deck teardown, in
Yeah.
general, when I show you this, what are your thoughts on how the two work together?
Oh, man, this is complicated.
Right. That's your first reaction. Why? Why is that an issue here?
It's a business plan squeezed into a pitch deck. I mean, I've looked thousands of pitch decks. I can tell you right away, and that's fine. This is all fixable. It's all fixable. But it kind of feels like it feels academic.
Right. And so you're saying the pitch deck that complements the request, it's similar to you send out an email and say, click here for your pitch deck.
Yeah.
You can say, here's the request, click for the pitch deck, and we're going to need that standalone screener introduction deck.
I think some people here might be familiar with the term executive summary. We don't use executive summaries anymore in the startup world, just so you guys know. Like if you're thinking, hey, my attorney said I should have an executive summary, your attorney's 20 years past due. But what we do have, though, is we have your elevator pitch that sits inside your email, and it's short and it's punchy and it's very deliberately crafted to say only the things that it needs to say. If you're not sure how it works or whether or not what you're saying is right, we actually have a tool on the site in the investor match that writes it for you. It like takes all of your info, you can even upload your pitch deck and it'll write it for you. And I say this to say what we use now is a very short form narrative that talks about the opportunity or the problem, the solution, the market size, the team, the traction, et cetera, in very short descriptive terms, like a few paragraphs at most, not like an entire life story. And I think that structure lends itself well to how a request should be published, and vice versa. I think how requests are being published are starting to condition people to say, get to the point.
Going back to Vladimir's request, I think a great best practice is to have everything just written out in these bite-sized bullets that you can scan and digest.
That's why I said it. Yeah.
But then also attach a pitch deck for more information to get a really good feel. Combining the two, I think, is a wonderful best practice that founders should consider.
Yeah, I agree. And you learn a lot by doing it. Look at the other requests. You'll start to get a sense for what works and what doesn't. And here's the funny thing. When you see other people's requests, like we were just showing them, you start to go, oh, that's shitty. Oh, wait a minute. That's exactly what I'm doing. I mean, that's how you learn. That's how you learn.
Learning is all a part of your attitude, everyone. Wanted to combine the two because it's not just the technical skills, but it's the adaptive, who you are, your character, your mindset that goes into it. Will, this has been great, just bouncing back and forth and getting your stories. What's your final word of encouragement for the founders who want to come to Startups.com and say, I'm seeking funding. How do I best position myself to be successful on Startups.com?
Sure. Just show up with raw clay. Right? Don't show up here with like, I have to have my final deck or I have to have everything figured out. The opposite. To me, raw clay is here's roughly the problem I'm trying to solve. Here's roughly the solution I've got in mind. Walk me through the rest. And we could do that, right? And we could do that, through the community. And even if you don't use us, I mean, there's a million ways to fund and grow a startup that don't involve us. Just get out there, seek the advice, reach out for the help. Don't do this in a vacuum. It ends poorly. And so what I recommend you do is reach out to the help. We've got it, on standby, but however you can get it, get it.
Check us out, Startups.com. You come here, try everything that we talked about for free. Even kick the tires a bit, join some meetings. Yep. We got a lot going on. Will, what's your final invitation for our founders to join us here at Startups.com?
Hop on, create a request just so you can get the ball rolling. It'll take you 5 minutes in most cases. We've got an AI that'll help you write it, et cetera. And just get the ball rolling. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of opportunities pop up, and you can start to see why just getting the intent out there starts to get the momentum going for your business.
That's it for us. We're here twice a week. Everyone, make sure you tip your waitress. Thank you, everyone. Well, this has been great. We'll see you next time.